Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Towergate. It is Towergate day number 595. 5 November the 1st, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of Towergate. Commercial free. Always commercial free. That's the best part. No annoying pop-up ads. And I don't have a Patreon account. Don't need any patrons, just viewers. I'll buy my own damn groceries, thank you. Let's see here. Oh yes, what a better place to start than this. A big part of the Commie-crat strategy for taking over the House was these 8 seats in California which they thought were vulnerable. These were seats, 7 of these 8 seats were open seats that were left open by Republicans who had retired, probably anti-Trumpers, who didn't want to be in Washington with Trump as president, so they decided to leave and left a vacant seat. These are key seats that the Democrats were looking at as being part of the blue wave. 8 of them. But now we're getting some information about what's going on with these 8 seats in California that were being heavily, and are being heavily, targeted by the Commie-crats. Doesn't look like it's going very well for them. Looks like the early voting is showing that there's more Republicans showing up to early voting in these 8 districts than there are Democrats, and that's pretty surprising because, you know, there's a lot more Commie-crats in California than there are Republicans. Not only that, but they're looking at the return ballots of all these absentee ballots that they sent out. And one thing that the Commie-crats were counting on as part of the blue wave was that they thought that they would energize the hardcore left wing of their base, which is largely millennials and people under 40, and they thought that these young people and people under 40 were going to flock to the polls to be a big part of their blue wave strategy. But it appears that in looking at the percentage of return ballots for Democrats in these 8 districts in California, only 6% of the return ballots for Democrats are voters under 40. Only 6%. And as was reported, these under 40 Democrats are being heavily outvoted by old white folks over 50. Old white folks over 50. That's who is voting heavily in these 8 congressional districts right now. Republicans over 50. That's who is really coming out to vote in these congressional districts in California. More bad news for the Commie-crats and their plot for a blue wave. Doesn't look like it's going to happen to me. Certainly doesn't look like these 8 seats are going to go Commie-crat. The Commie-crats thought they were going to pick up all 8 of these. They may not pick up a single one. And if the trends continue with more Republicans in early voting showing up, and especially with younger Democrats, the millennial type Democrats, not showing up in the numbers that the Commie-crats thought they would, and knowing that Republicans vote heavier on election day than Democrats, it's looking an awful lot to me like these 8 seats in California are not going to go blue. Looks like they are going to stay red. That's what these numbers certainly indicate. More bad news for the Commie-crats. You know, there's a lot of reasons why we are seeing these numbers, these early voting numbers, seeing the numbers of people coming out to these Trump rallies, seeing the number of Republicans getting involved, and they're saying, well, it was the Kavanaugh. It was the Kavanaugh thing. Yeah, the Kavanaugh thing certainly woke people up as to what type of dastardly deeds that Comicrats will engage in, and exactly what they will do, the lengths they will go to literally destroy someone for power. And yes, the caravan steaming toward our border is probably not helping them. But I honestly believe one thing that's really driving this early turnout with Republicans, this really high turnout with Republicans, I think one thing that's really driving them that nobody talks about is the fact that we had so much fun in the election in 2016 watching the aftermath of the 2016 elections, the liberal meltdowns. They are literally classics for the ages. They have provided quality entertainment for many of us since the 2016 election, and I still go back and watch those videos, those compilation videos of the 2016 election night meltdown. And I actually believe that one thing that's driving a lot of Republicans to vote is that they had so much fun watching the liberals melt down in 2016 that they want to see it again. They want to see exactly what happens if you can hit the Democrats 2 times in a row. Can they go any crazier than they were in 2016? What will it look like if they lose in 2018 the same way? Predicting the blue wave just like they predicted Hillary would win in a landslide. We saw how they reacted then. Will they react the same way or worse this time? We're talking about epic comedy and entertainment. Quality entertainment. Quality entertainment that can be enjoyed by the entire conservative family. As we watch the liberal tears form the blue wave, waving as they go bye-bye, out of power, and possibly out of existence. Could the Commie-Crat Party go the way of the Whigs? I don't know. But I'll tell you this. I had so much fun in 2016. I just want to see what happens if they suffer that kind of defeat again. And I think that a lot of other people feel the same way. That's why they're coming out in such big numbers. We want to do it to them again, don't we? Because it's fun. It's fun. It's fun defeating communists. Mark Meadows has written a letter asking Judge Collier, head of the FISA court, top lawyer to FISA court, to investigate whether the FBI abused the FISA process, whether the FISA process was weaponized for political gain, and whether the FBI misled the FISA court by relying on the Steele dossier to mount a case against Carter Page. I think those are rhetorical questions. Now, I'm pretty sure that Mark Meadows has seen the 99-page FISA court document written by Judge Collier. Of course, she's quite aware of everything that happened. She was the author of that 99-page FISA court document that we've all talked about, showing the multiple private contractors accessing the NSA database. And we're pretty sure at least one of those was Confusion GPS. We know that Nellie Orr was actually working for Confusion GPS at that same time. We know that Mr. Richmond, Comey's good friend, had been given special FBI status at about that same time. There's a lot of names redacted, so we don't know who they are. I don't know if Meadows has seen the unredacted version of the 99-page court FISA document written by Judge Collier. I would assume he has, but if he hasn't, he certainly should do that. But this is something we've all been talking about for a very long time. And listen, it's not just Judge Collier. It is Chief Justice John Roberts. He is over the FISA court and over Collier, and he has to be aware of the things that happened. He's had to have seen the 99-page FISA court document. This is what we're all talking about. This is showing the massive, massive deep state corruption that even when they're caught red-handed by their own people, who then release a public document and tell us what they did, they do nothing. There is no sense whatsoever within the deep state that anyone ever be held accountable. They get caught doing all sorts of horrible things, but nothing is really done about it. Yeah, they'll write a report. Here's what happened. Okay, this is what happened. Good. But nothing, no actions ever taken against the deep state operatives because they all play on the same team. This is the problem. So we've been talking about this for a very long time. It's not just that Judge Collier, when she discovered this stuff, she should have immediately gone to Sessions and said, hey, sorry, but I just found out these things that were going on with the FISA court. We have private contractors accessing the database. You need to know about this. There needs to be a serious investigation. These are crimes. But that didn't happen. And the FISA court, 99-page FISA court document's been out there for over a year. Year and 4 months. A year and 4 months we've known about this. Certainly John Roberts knows all about it. And he's the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who's over Judge Collier. He certainly has to know about this. There's just, in the swamp, there's just no desire whatsoever to hold anybody accountable. It's just, it's probably just business as usual for those folks. They look at it and go, yeah, well, these are horrible crimes, but we do this stuff every day. This is SOP, standard operating procedure, par for the course. This is what we do every day here in Washington. It's not unusual. My goodness, if we prosecuted these individuals, we'd have to prosecute everybody in Washington, because this is what we do here. It's called corruption. It's what we do. It's all we do. It's all we know. That's why we're here. You folks out in the hinterlands and flyover country, just get up and go to work every day and mind your own business. We'll take care of things here in the swamp. We'll continue with what we do. We've always been doing it. We're going to keep doing it because that's what we do here. That's why we call it the swamp. Not anymore. Not anymore. It's got to stop. I'm so happy for Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan and a handful of others that are hanging on, continue pursuing this, and I'm pretty sure that after the midterms and after Uncle Bob the Executioner has been shut down and sent packing, that we're going to start digging into this deal. It's going to get messy. It's going to get ugly. We're going to break a lot of eggs cooking up this omelet, and it's going to be a beaut. Don Lemonhead. Don Lemonhead of CNN. Some of you know him. He has probably the lowest ratings on CNN, but they refused to fire him. I wonder why. Don Lemonhead was having a conversation with his other asshat friend at CNN, Chris Cuomo, and he literally said in the same breath the following, talking to Chris Cuomo. This is Don Lemonhead. Tells Chris Cuomo, yeah, we have to stop demonizing people and realize that the biggest terrorist threat in our country is white men. We have to stop demonizing people and realize that the biggest threat in this country, the biggest terrorist threat in this country, is white men. Now, Cuomo's a white man. He doesn't think of himself as a white man because he's a liberal. So he can be anything he wants to be on any particular day. Well, Mr. Lemonhead, you might want to go take a look at the FBI crime statistics, the breakdown on race, Mr. Lemonhead, and I think you'll find that the percentages per capita tell a different story. Yes, of course, white men commit the majority of crimes in the country because we are the majority. We are the majority. There's a lot more white people in the country than there are brown people or other. Therefore, you have a higher percentage of us in the country. You have the potential likelihood that we will have the highest number of crimes. And there are more men, and generally, than women, slightly more. But we all know that men are more aggressive and commit more crimes than women, certainly violent crimes. I think we can feel pretty safe with that, and there's FBI statistics to back that up. Men commit more crime than women, particularly violent crime. And there are more white men than there are men of color. Therefore, it's pretty easy to say that white men commit most of the violent crime in the country, obviously. But when you look at the per capita statistics based on other factors, Mr. Lemonhead, you'll find that the numbers don't pan out quite that way. It's a stupid statement to make, especially when you say in the same breath that we need to stop demonizing people, and in the same breath say that we need to realize that the biggest terrorist threat in the country is white men. An entire massive group of people that you target and isolate, Mr. Lemonhead, after just saying that we shouldn't target groups of people. Should never target groups of people and things like this. Individuals commit these crimes, not groups, in this country. Unless they're part of a organized group, then you could say that. But the stories that he's talking about, the recent stories with the synagogue guy, a shooter, the fake cartoon bomber, these are just isolated idiots. The guy who shot up the Republicans on the baseball field, just an isolated idiot. You can't make these statements on a large group of people like that. This is asinine and idiotic. Don Lemonhead should be pulled off the air. But it doesn't matter. Not enough people even watch the show. It didn't matter. He might as well be off the air. Nobody watches Lemonhead anyhow. What an asshole. I just don't like that guy. Never have. He's got that beta male thing going on too. Pretty sure he's homosexual. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Megan Smelly. In addition to demanding her $69 million remaining dollars on her contract with NBC, it appears that she wants $10 million bonus. Now her lawyer's denying that, but that's what's being reported. It's being reported that Megyn Kelly's negotiations with NBC after her firing is that she is demanding she gets her $69 million remaining in that contract, and she apparently wants $10 million more. That's what's being reported. Now, I'm trying to imagine getting fired from my job and then going in and demanding I get paid the remaining salary that I would have had left for the end of the year or to the rest of my life or whatever. I'm pretty sure I would get laughed at. I don't know about any of you, but I guess that's the way that things work in the media world and in sports and various other things where you have these contracts where they're guaranteed contracts. Even if they fire you, they got to pay you unless they can find some fault. So maybe that's the issue. Maybe they're saying Megyn Kelly is fired. It wasn't that there was a no-fault issue, that she actually was at fault, that she said something that you can't say or shouldn't say on TV or whatever about people painting their faces black and nothing being wrong with that or whatever. And this apparently is the issue, I guess, that they'll be arguing. This thing's going to get very ugly, by the way, because Smelly is also lashing out at reporters who say that, who she says are stalking her home and taking pictures of her family. Megan Smelly said she gave reporters donuts in hopes that they would leave her alone and stop taking pics of her kids. Well, Megan, the donuts might have worked on the cops. Now, if those were cops sitting out there, you probably could have got them away by giving them donuts. But reporters, I don't know if they eat donuts. I think they eat tofu and bean sprouts. But no, it's quite funny. I do agree that they shouldn't be taking pics of our kids. That's not probably right. They shouldn't be doing that. I don't advocate for that at all. But it's just funny that Megan Smelly, who considers herself a reporter or a journalist, now is not happy with the fact that she's got reporters camped out on the lawn and following her everywhere she goes. Funny how reporters don't mind when they do it to other people, but when it gets done back to them, they have a real big problem with it. This situation with Megan Smelly and NBC is going to get much uglier. Much uglier. Because apparently she is also, I guess, has some knowledge or some dirt on some other people at NBC. She apparently has some information on what's his name, who they fired. What was his name? The morning anchor. Real popular guy who they fired for sexual, misconduct. Lauer, Matt Lauer. She apparently has more info on Lauer. and on NBC executives who knew about Lauer and did nothing. She's apparently got some kind of information about that, so she's using this as kind of leverage. So there's going to be a lot of dirty stuff going on here. It'll probably be played out in the media, and we'll get to, of course, enjoy it all. So there you go, Megan Smelly. 60% of millennials, 60% of millennials are not familiar with their congressperson. Okay, these are the people the Democrats are counting on for a blue wave. If 60% of the people you're counting on to go vote in large numbers don't even know the name of their congressperson, you've probably got some issues, and they're not healthy issues. The breakdown for millennials, we're told, is 18 to 34. Now, of the people who are 18 to 34 on average across the U.S., people in that millennial range are registered to the following percentages. 18 to 34s, 36% are registered Democommies, 23% Republican, 27% Independent, and 13% something else. 36% Dem, 23 Republican, 27 Indy. Those are not really good numbers if you're counting on these people, and especially when only 40% of them especially when, not 40, 6%, when only 6% of them out in California have even shown up so far. The numbers are just not looking good, my friends. And I actually thought that the number of millennials registered as Democrats would be much higher than that. I would have thought over 50%, but it's only 36. Only 36% of millennials are registered Democrats, 23 Republican, and 27 Indy. And independents seem to be breaking for Trump and Republicans. They certainly did in 2016, including women. Trump won the women's vote. Mark Meadows says that Congress just learned that the FBI taped Papadopoulos in 2016. Meadows is now asking the Department of Justice for the transcribed notes and tapes about Papadopoulos. What the hell's going on here? Now, for about the past 3 to 4 weeks, Papadopoulos has been sending out these tweets about all these things he's just learned. Congress, very quietly, because the election is kind of overshadowing a lot of this news, but Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, others are talking about all this new information that they're learning. So, what this tells me is that when did all this new information, really juicy information, start coming out? And a lot of it, John Solomon's done like 3 stories dropping major information that is things that we had been asking questions about for months and months and months, that all of a sudden just falls in his lap. And we know he interviewed Papadopoulos, but he's obviously getting information from somewhere else at the Department of Justice, and he admits that. He admits he's got sources inside the DOJ. Well, it appears to me that this seems to coincide with the 2 interviews that we know of, maybe more we don't know of, with James Baker, the former FBI General Counsel. And a lot of people were suggesting that maybe Baker flipped. Well, I don't know about flipping, because I don't know if you can flip to Congress. You flip to a prosecutor. Flipping to me means you become a witness for the state. You say, okay, I'll cop a plea. You don't prosecute me, and I'll tell you everything I know. And I'll give up all the names of all the people involved. To me, that's a flip. Congress is not really a prosecutor. So I don't know that I would use the term flipped for Baker, but I would say he's certainly proving to Congress in these congressional committee hearings that he is not willing to cover up for anyone, that he most likely doesn't feel like he actually did anything wrong, but that he observed a lot of things that he feels were probably not right. That's my general take on how Baker is playing his hand. is that he doesn't feel he was involved in any criminal activity, but he certainly witnessed it, and he wasn't going to volunteer it at the time, but if asked, he's not going to lie about it. That is kind of how I see Baker. He's not lying about things when he's asked. He's just telling the truth. He obviously must feel that he's not in any legal jeopardy because he's not taking the fifth, and he's not being questioned by a prosecutor or a grand jury or anything like that. He's being questioned by Congress. I don't know that you can cut a deal with Congress. I guess you can. You can cut a deal with Congress, but it's not, the deal you cut with Congress doesn't affect a criminal prosecution or anything like that. That's a totally different deal. So this is what I am beginning to think, is that James Baker is the guy who really has taken this thing to another level in terms of information they've been getting here in the past few weeks. That's been the source for John Solomon's stories, the last 3 or 4 he's written that are bombshells. The change in behavior that we see with Papadopoulos now in his tweets in the last couple weeks, and the last several things we've heard from Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan about what they've learned, it all seems to be around these two that we know of, hearings that they've had and things that they've learned from James Baker. But yes, if they, and we assume they did take Papadopoulos told the FBI that he felt like he was being recorded, and it turns out, it looks like he was. And apparently there are transcribed notes from interviews, and there are tapes, and Mark Meadows wants them. They'll all come out. It's all coming out. Trump says he will take the birthright citizenship to the Supreme Court, and he says it will be ended one way or another. And you can take that to the bank. Yes, he's using it as a political tool a week out from the election to force the Democrats to talk about the issue, because they've been told all across the country, Democrats have been told, do not talk about immigration or the caravan. If someone talks about it, change the subject to health care. Talk about health care. Health care. Do not talk about Kavanaugh. Do not talk about the invasion. Do not talk about any of that. Change the subject to health care. So Trump is simply forcing them by throwing something out there that he knows the media talking heads on the left cannot resist. They cannot resist. So Trump knows that if he says that he's going to end birthright citizenship, that the very next day, Joe and Mika and the Don Lemonhead and all these crazy leftists, CNN, MSNBC, and all the rest will not be able to resist jumping all over it, which will put the issue back front and center. Immigration and the caravan, heading north. That's what Trump wants people thinking about when they vote on Tuesday. And he's making sure that that happens. And the liberal media is falling right in, taking the bait just like they always do. It's a thing of beauty. This is going to blow your mind. Now, we know that Trump's support has been going up with Latinos and blacks for months and months. We keep seeing more and more reports of how more popular he's getting. But this, being reported in the Gateway Pundit, says that support for Trump among blacks is now at 40%. Now, if that's true, if that is true, and that plays itself out in the 2018 midterms, then the Democrats are going to lose badly. And if that continues, that'll be practically the end of the Democratic Party. They cannot win elections with the blacks, 40% of blacks voting Republican. That is pretty much the end of the party right there. Well, or at least ways they would have to totally change the platform of their party and change the target demographic, because they can't give up 40% of the black vote, and no telling how much of the Latino vote that Trump is taking, but it's probably over 25%. That could spell serious doom and gloom, and if this is true, and if these numbers pan out, there's going to be a gigantic red tsunami. I haven't even been predicting a red tsunami. I'm just saying the Republicans are going to do pretty well next Tuesday night. I think they'll end up with 57 Senate seats. That would be a very good night. And I think they'll end up with a slim majority in the House, 222 seats, 6 more than they need for a majority. That is a modest evening. It's a pretty good night. It's not a great night. It's not a tsunami. It's just a pretty good night. But if 40% of blacks, and I don't know how many Latinos turn out and vote Republican, that would be an absolute tsunami. That would be a complete. I mean, Republicans would gain, like Larry was talking, 230. In the comment section, he commented he believes maybe like 230. Yeah, if 40% of blacks vote for Trump, shit, you could be talking 250, 260. I mean, that would take races that are leaning Democrat and turn them into Republican strongholds. That'd be extraordinary if that were to happen. I mean, to see Trump get, what, 8% or something, or 12% in 2016, and 2 years later get 40, that is almost unheard of. Let's see what happens. Commie Bernie is saying that he might run in 2020, but he won't say for sure. But he's speaking to an audience of his supporters, and he says that he's not going to commit to serving his entire full 6 years in the Senate. And he's suggesting that because he might be running in 2020. Now, wouldn't that be hilarious? We have the Rotten Reverend Clinton saying that she'll decide after the midterms if she wants to run again. And you know she's going to, unless she's indicted, which she probably will be, or has a health issue. Wouldn't it be funny to see a Bernie versus Hillary again in 2020? That would be hilarious, because it would be much harder for her and the DNC and the media to cheat Bernie in 2020, because everybody would be onto it that had happened before. And there's probably going to be a lot more people watching these elections in the future, and we know that because Trump set up a special task force just to do that. And they would definitely have people watching the Democrat primary very, very closely to see if the Rotten Reverend Clinton, the media, and the DNC would try to screw Bernie again. And in a straight race that's not rigged, Bernie may beat the Rotten Reverend Clinton. In fact, I think he probably would. He probably would. Wouldn't that be hilarious to see Bernie destroy the Rotten Reverend Clinton in the primary? That would be funny. Barack Hussein Obama. Barack Hussein Obama, the Kenyan, was in Michigan campaigning for Stabenow, and he told the audience that they should vote early. That's right. Told them to get out there and take advantage of early voting. The only problem is they do not have early voting in Michigan, proving once again that Obama, who campaigned in all 57 states, is a fucking moron. And a Kenyan with a fake birth certificate that popped up on his website after a lot of pressure for one day. And what happened less than 24 hours after he finally put the fake birth certificate up on his website? They captured Bin Laden. Who do you think wrote that script? Which one of his Hollywood buddies do you think wrote that script for him? Probably Harvey Weinstein. Harvey, I just had to put my fake birth certificate up on my website under a lot of pressure. What would you do if you were me, Harvey? Well, gosh, Barack, I think I'd capture Bin Laden. That'd take your birth certificate off the page, which is exactly what happened. That birth certificate was up there for one day, long enough for a few people to save it and look at it. It's a fraud, just like Barack Hussein Obama. The leftists are already organizing riots in Brazil over the Bolsonaro victory, and they're promising to do that here. Carl Reiner, the father of Meathead, so we can call him Meathead Sr., is now comparing Trump to Hitler again. He was doing this last summer. Again, Mr. Reiner, and you should probably remember this, you're old enough. It was you and your liberal friends back in the 1930s that loved Hitler. Jon Stewart is saying that Trump is winning by baiting journalists with their own narcissism. Boy, did he nail it. John Leibowitz, otherwise known as Jon Stewart, is a lib, but sometimes he speaketh the truth, and he nailed it there. That's exactly what Trump does. Trump is winning by baiting journalists with their own narcissism. Dead on, Mr. Leibowitz. Nancy Pelosi's doubling down, saying, we will win. She thinks she's going to be the next speaker. We will win. Let's see how that goes. And of course, many of you have seen the Project Veritas video where they have now targeted Gillum. Gillum, now the target. It's worth watching. Project Veritas. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow. See you guys. Bye.